Both teams still trying things against each other. CJ came out red hot again. And the Knicks actually had some success cooling him off by moving Josh Hart onto him. Josh is just such a gifted defender. He has strength. He has a low center of gravity. He's good at like anticipating angles and moving his feet. So in these like physical playoff environments, he's actually an extremely gifted defender. Mike Brown finally moved off of Mikal Bridges. Mikal has been legitimately terrible in this series. 0 points in the last 6 quarters with 4 turnovers. A guy that they literally traded damn near a half dozen draft picks for. It definitely has not been a good look how poor Mikal has looked in this series so far. So Mike only played him 21 minutes tonight. He ended up closing with Deuce McBride. And Deuce played pretty well. He had 5 threes and he was plus 16 in his minutes. Mikal was minus 26 in 21 minutes tonight. That is an insane stat. Both teams, you know, the kind of the story of this series is the hunting of matchups, right? Like Jalen Brunson is hunting CJ McCollum whenever he can. Hey guys, sorry to interrupt. If you've made it this far, it would mean a lot to us if you would just hit that subscribe button really quick. He spent some time hunting on Onyeka Okongwu at the end of game 2, which ended up being a mistake. Ended up on Okongwu a few times tonight, which we're going to talk about. And Okongwu deserves a ton of credit. Like his ability to play the jump shot on Brunson has been a huge factor in this series. He's played Brunson into some really, really tough pull-ups that are like begging, that have no shot of going in, and forcing him into some drives like we saw on that final possession of the game. On the Hawks side, though, it's been everybody, right? Like CJ's hunting Jalen Brunson, Jonathan Kuminga's hunting Jalen Brunson, Jalen Johnson's hunting Jalen Brunson, but it's all been about hunting matchups, right? And this, what I thought was a really fascinating part of this particular game was how successful both teams were at avoiding those switches by using the hedge and recover. And the hedge and recover is a very, very basic defensive scheme. It's typically used to protect guards. But essentially all you do is you have the person that's getting targeted when they get hit, but when they get brought into the screening action, they run out and lunge at the ball handler to try to get them to pick up their dribble or take a backwards dribble. And then they sprint back to their guy. Because if they pick up their dribble, if there's a backup dribble, that gives the guy who's getting screened an opportunity to fight through, right? And then your job is wherever your guy is, whether he's slipping to the basket or he's slipping out to the three-point line, you have to sprint back to your man to try to get try to prevent a wide open 3 or an easy slip, something along those lines. And both teams actually did a really good job using hedge and recovers with CJ, with Jalen to protect those two guys and prevent those matchups. There were still times where it happened, right? Like CJ got caught in a holding a hedge too long late in the game to hit OG Anunoby in the pocket, swing pass to the Deuce McBride 3 that tied the game, right? Or like Jalen Brunson had a terrible hedge late in the game where he let Jalen Johnson go screaming downhill and he tried to dunk it, got blocked by Cat, but he got the offensive rebound and put it back. So it wasn't perfect. There were mistakes, but throughout the game, there was a lot of successful hedge and recover sequences that prevented those guys from getting hunted. And that actually caused Atlanta in particular to shift the way they were attacking late in the game. If you guys remember in game 2, it was almost entirely CJ going at Jalen Brunson because the Knicks were kind of conceding the switch. This game, because they were having such a hard time getting Josh Hart off of CJ, and this has been a story throughout this matchup, whether it's Josh refusing to get screened off of Jalen Johnson in their regular season matchup or in these first 2 games, or in the second half tonight, just Josh like, I'm not getting off CJ, sorry. And so as a result, they had to look in another direction. They started to use their forwards a lot more. And so they ended up hunting Jalen Brunson, who was guarding Jonathan Kuminga at the end of this game, by putting Jalen Johnson on the ball, having Kuminga set screens. They even had Kuminga go at him one-on-one off the left block, and they got a lot of good shots out of it. Jalen Johnson had a play where he drove at Brunson and then hit Kuminga in the pocket. Kuminga got a little layup on the roll. He had another one where he drew a foul. I think he ended up missing both free throws, but he got to the line on one of those plays. Kuminga, another massive play. He's been great attacking guards over the last 2 games. Had Brunson on the left block, spun towards the baseline, kick out to Okongwu in the corner, extra pass to Jalen Johnson. Defense is in rotation because Cat had to come over to help on the Kuminga drive. Jalen Johnson ends up getting an easy driving layup. So they ended up having another method with which to attack. File that away because that's something I think that's going to be something that New York should consider as they look at new options to try to score when we get to game 4. But there was a handful, like down the stretch, for the most part, it was really hard for them to get favorable matchups. Like Brunson did get CJ on a switch one time, and he got that and one. That was the one that put the Knicks up 3, and he had that big celebration moment in front of the crowd. But other than that, Brunson really couldn't get him on a switch, right? It ended up being him going at a Kongu a couple times down the stretch. And that's really kind of the story of the series to me. What ends up happening is teams over the course of a series kind of find some ways to inevitably, on the key possessions, protect their vulnerable guys more often than not. Like Brunson goes at CJ in a hedge late and hits Deuce McBride on the right wing, and he racks the close out to the baseline, and CJ recovers and strips the ball from Deuce McBride. So bam, advantage gone. The ball goes out of bounds, right? Or like we talked about Jalen Johnson attacking Brunson in ball screens. They had a switch where him and OG Anunoby switched, and OG had a good closeout, and Kuminga passed it back to Jalen Johnson, and he missed a three. And it's like, okay, we kept Jalen Johnson out of the lane. That didn't work anymore. And what ends up happening is it's like, okay, can you score against one of our best defenders when your scheme to protect your vulnerable defender works? What do you do? And thanks to those two prayers that OG Anunoby hit, we got ourselves a back and forth game late. And the difference was CJ McCollum on those possessions where he had no choice but to go at good Knicks defenders because the Knicks protected Brunson. CJ was able to hit a couple of shots. He hit a step back going to his left over Josh Hart, a guy who had him in a straitjacket much of the second half. He had no choice. This guy's got me. He's playing great defense on me, but I can't get him off of me, and my team needs a bucket. I got to go score on Josh Hart, and he did. And then on the game winner, now you could argue it should have been McHale. Mike goes back to McHale, but he tucks McHale on Nickeil Alexander-Walker in the corner, and Nickeil was basically completely uninvolved in the offense down the stretch. Knowing that CJ likes to go to the pull-up, Mike should have probably gone to McHale because McHale is going to be able to get more length on the pull-up. But either way, Deuce McBride's a good defender. And CJ just gave him a bucket. Got downhill off of the inbounds and just got into his body with that left shoulder, into a step back going right, and he knocked it down. On the other end of the floor, Jalen Brunson ended up having a possession where he got switched on to Jalen Johnson. He had no choice but to go at him. He missed. He had two opportunities to go at Onyeka Okongwu late in the game, and he struggled to even get a decent look off. A super difficult fadeaway off the right wing where he's going to his left. One of the toughest shots you'll see Brunson take. And then on the final play when he drove into traffic and turned the ball over, throwing it to Josh Hart. That was the difference. CJ, when things broke down, was able to get a bucket versus New York's best defenders. And Jalen Brunson could not. CJ has just straight up outplayed Jalen Brunson in this series. He's looked like the better basketball player on both ends of the floor through 3 games. And that's the difference. In addition to the more efficient volume scoring, CJ's shot making has quite literally pushed the Hawks over the top in each of these last 2 wins. CJ hit game winners in both games, basically. With extra time on the clock, but they essentially amounted to game winners in the final minute. The only antidote to elite, well-executed playoff defense is that supreme shot creation like we were just talking about in the first segment. Whether it's shot making or it's advantage creation or some combination of the two, you're going to find some favorable matchups and you'll take advantage of those. And when the defense makes mistakes, you might get a layup or an open 3 here or there, but ultimately you need a guy who can beat the defense when they do everything right. That's why just about every team that has won the title in NBA history has had one of those truly great offensive players. Coming into the season, Jalen Brunson was universally considered to be a top 10 player in the NBA. He had an up and down year, but he had stretches like December in that stretch where at the NBA Cup and the few games after where he literally looked like a top 5 player in the world. And he's been soundly outplayed by CJ McCollum in this series. And CJ has done it with that facsimile of that star-like shot creation. Just like I said with Denver, that dynamic will not shift for the Knicks until Cat and Jalen Brunson can find some way to flip that script.